Right now, as you're watching this, something is happening in the markets that Warren Buffett has been preparing for since 2023. Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on over $330 billion in cash. That's not an accident. That's not indecision. That is the most deliberate signal Warren Buffett has ever sent. And most investors are completely misreading it. In 2026, with tariffs reshaping global trade, interest rates still elevated, and volatility hitting levels we haven't seen in years, the question every investor needs to answer right now is this: what would Buffett actually do? Not what he said in 1987, not what he did in 2008, what his current positioning tells us he's doing right now in this environment with these conditions. In the next 17 minutes, I'm going to walk you through his exact 5-move playbook for a market like this one. Move 3 is the one almost nobody is talking about, and it's arguably the most important thing you can do in the next 90 days. Stay with me. Let me give you some context before we get into the moves. We are not in a normal market environment right now. In 2026, investors are dealing with a combination of conditions that hasn't existed simultaneously in decades. Elevated interest rates that the Fed has been slow to cut. Tariff escalations that are reshaping supply chains across entire industries. A commercial real estate sector under serious stress. And equity valuations that by most historical measures are still stretched. This is not a prediction of a crash. Pause. Nobody can predict that. What we can do is look at what the most successful, long-term investor in history is actually doing with his money right now, and use that as a signal. And what Buffett is doing right now is very clear. He has been a net seller of equities for 6 consecutive quarters. He sold significant portions of his Apple position, his largest holding, and he's accumulated the largest cash reserve in Berkshire's history. Most commentators frame this as Buffett waiting on the sidelines. That framing completely misses the point. Buffett isn't waiting, he's positioned. There is a difference between sitting out of fear and sitting with a plan, and what follows are the 5 moves that define that plan, drawn directly from his shareholder letters, public interviews, and 60 years of market behavior. Move 1 is what Buffett does before any market downturn that most people skip entirely. Move 3 is the counterintuitive action he takes when everyone else is selling, and move 5 is the one that compounds the other 4, and it has nothing to do with picking stocks. Move number 1: hold cash like a weapon, not a waiting room. Berkshire's $330 billion cash position isn't a sign that Buffett has run out of ideas. It's a sign that he believes the price of patience right now is lower than the price of action. Most investors treat cash as a failure state, money that isn't working. Buffett treats it as optionality, the ability to act decisively when everyone else is paralyzed. In his 2023 shareholder letter, Buffett wrote that Berkshire would always hold a boatload of cash, not because he was bearish on America, but because he never wanted to be in a position where he needed to sell good assets to fund operations or act on opportunities. In distressed markets, the investor with cash isn't just safe, he's the one setting the terms. He's the buyer when every seller is desperate. That is not a passive position. That is a structural advantage. If you don't have at least 15 to 20% of your portfolio in cash or short-term equivalents. Right now, you have no optionality. You cannot act when the opportunity comes because your capital is already deployed. Build that position before you need it, not after. Move 2 is about what Buffett does with that cash when markets start to crack, and the specific conditions he waits for before deploying it. Move number 2. Define your buy list before the crash, not during it. When markets drop 20, 30, 40%, most investors freeze, not because they don't have capital, because they haven't done the work in advance to know what they'd buy, at what price. Buffett is never in that position because he already knows exactly which businesses he wants to own and exactly what he'd pay for them. The crash doesn't create his shopping list, it just opens the store. Buffett has said repeatedly that he reads hundreds of annual reports a year, not because he's planning to buy immediately, but because he's building familiarity so that when a great business becomes available at a fair price, he can decide in hours rather than weeks. In 2008, he committed $5 billion to Goldman Sachs and $3 billion to General Electric within days of the market collapsing. He moved that fast because he'd already done the analysis. The crisis didn't create the opportunity. It just revealed the price. Right now, today, write down 5 to 10 businesses you genuinely understand and would want to own at the right price. For each one, decide what price would represent a genuine margin of safety. Then set alerts. When the market drops and those prices hit, you won't need to think. You'll just execute. And now, move 3, the one almost no one talks about, and the reason it works is completely counterintuitive. Move number 3. Buy in stages. Never go all in at once. Most investors who understand Buffett's philosophy make one critical error. When markets drop, they try to time the bottom. They wait for the absolute lowest price, and in doing so, they either buy too early, panic when it drops further, or miss the recovery entirely while waiting for a lower entry that never comes. Buffett doesn't try to time the bottom. He buys in stages. When Buffett identified an opportunity in 2008, he didn't deploy all of Berkshire's capital at once. He bought incrementally, committing capital in tranches as conditions developed. This approach does 3 things. First, it removes the psychological pressure of needing to be exactly right. Second, it allows him to buy more as prices fall further, lowering his average cost. Third, it keeps capital available if conditions deteriorate beyond initial expectations. He's described this approach not as indecision, but as getting paid to wait. The classic Buffett quote applies here directly. I don't look to jump over 7-foot bars. I look around for 1-foot bars that I can step over. When markets drop and your buy list prices are hit, deploy no more than 25 to 30% of your available capital on the first entry. Hold the rest. If the market falls further, you have more to deploy at better prices. If it recovers, you're already in. Either way, you've removed the single biggest risk of crash investing, going all in at the wrong moment. Move 4 is what Buffett does during the actual volatility, while the market is still falling, and it's the move most investors find hardest to execute. Move number 4, ignore the news, read the business. During a market crash, financial media operates in full panic mode. Every headline is louder than the last. Every analyst has a new lower price target. Every talking head has a reason. The bottom isn't in yet. Buffett doesn't watch financial television during crashes. He reads annual reports. The distinction Buffett draws is between the price of a business and the value of a business. During a crash, price moves violently, driven by fear, margin calls, forced selling, and sentiment. Value moves slowly, driven by earnings power, competitive position, and long-term demand. When a great business drops 40% in a crash, its price has changed dramatically. Its value has usually changed very little. Buffett described the 2008 crisis in his annual letter with a now famous line, "In the short run, the market is a voting machine. In the long run, it is a weighing machine." During crashes, everyone is voting emotionally. He's the one doing the weighing. The question during a crash is never, "What is the market doing?" The question is always, "Has the underlying business fundamentally changed?" If the answer is no, the crash is a price event, not a value event. And price events are opportunities. During the next major market sell-off, close your brokerage app, close the financial news, open the last annual report of the business you're evaluating. Ask one question: has anything in this report fundamentally changed because of what's happening in the market right now? If the answer is no, you have your answer on whether to buy, hold, or panic. And the final move, move 5, is the one that makes all 4 of the others possible. Without this, none of the other moves work. Move number 5. Think in decades, not days. Every market crash in history has eventually been followed by a recovery, every single one. The 1929 crash, the 1987 Black Monday, the dot-com collapse, the 2008 financial crisis, the 2020 COVID crash. In each case, the investors who held through the downturn and bought during the fear were over a 10-year horizon, significantly better off than the ones who sold. Buffett's entire system is built on one foundational belief: that American businesses and the global economy more broadly will be worth more in 10 years than they are today. That belief doesn't waver during crashes. It actually strengthens. In his 2008 op-ed in the New York Times, published in the middle of the financial crisis, Buffett wrote, "I've been buying American stocks." He published this when the Dow was still falling, when unemployment was rising, when banks were failing, when nobody knew how bad it would get. He bought anyway, because his time frame wasn't the next quarter. It wasn't even the next year. It was the next decade. That time horizon changes everything. A 40% crash in year 1 looks completely different. When you zoom out to a 10-year chart, it's barely visible. The next time you feel the urge to sell during a crash, pull up a 20-year chart of the S&P 500. Find every crash on that chart. Then find where the market is now, relative to each of those crashes. Then ask yourself, am I selling because the business has changed, or because the price has changed? If it's the price, and you have a 10-year horizon, Buffett's answer has been the same for 60 years. Stay in, buy more, and let time do the work. 5 moves, 1 playbook, the same system Buffett has used through every major market crisis of the last 60 years. Let's bring them together. Move 1. Hold cash as a weapon. Build optionality before you need it. Move 2. Define your buy list. Now, know what you'd buy, and at what price, before the drop happens. Move 3. Buy in stages, Never go all in at once. Deploy in tranches. And keep powder dry. Move 4. Ignore the news. Read the business. Separate price events from value events. Move 5. Think in decades, not days. Your time horizon is the single most important variable in how you experience a market crash. Here is the thing that almost nobody says during a market downturn. Crashes are not problems for investors with a plan. They are problems for investors without one. Buffett's $330 billion cash position isn't a sign that he's afraid of what's coming. It's a sign that he has already decided exactly what he'll do when it arrives. You now have the same playbook if you want to go deeper on the thinking behind these moves, specifically the mental models Buffett and Charlie Munger use to make decisions under pressure. That's exactly what the next video in this series covers. Munger's framework is different from Buffett's in some important ways, and understanding both is what gives you the complete picture. That video is right here.